Hey everybody, welcome back to the show in which we talk about your psychology, how to relate to your unconscious with your unconscious, and specifically how to do it. So we're two levels of specificity deep here on Animus Air, relating with your unconscious and specifically how to do it. I mean, it's a lot like, ever had a girlfriend, ever had one of those? How do you listen to her, if you ever do? Do you listen to exactly what she's saying, or do you get the general sense of what she's saying and why she's saying it, and do you listen to that? That's very similar to listening to your emotions. I mean, if you just respond to how your emotions make you feel in the moment, then they can get you to do a whole bunch of weird things, and it's just symptom management, like managing a girlfriend's specific complaints. Or do you look at what's behind the complaints? Oh, she's unhappy. She's unsatisfied. Maybe she doesn't trust me, and that's why she's complaining. Oh, you're nagging at me about cleaning up the garage. Yeah, but what's behind the nagging? Why would she do it? What's behind the anxiety? Why is the anxiety coming up right now? How does that process work? Not just with her, but with your emotions. And that's how you can really communicate. Ultimately, how you communicate with your girlfriend or, with your boyfriend, if you're a woman or a gay guy, whatever, is about, okay, here's what you're saying on the surface. Now what's beyond that? Now that sounds great, but specifically we talk what's the structure beyond that, how to relate with those emotions specifically. I mean, because emotions are specific things. And you may not think you have an emotional issue, but what is your issue, right? Procrastination. You want to do things. You wake up in the morning to do something, but you don't do it. That's an emotional issue. Or you want to stop doing something, getting distracted on YouTube, for instance, but you can't stop doing it even though you've read every Jocko Willink book. Still not doing it. Okay, that's an emotional issue. I'm not saying anything Jocko Willink says is wrong, but there's a deeper way of looking at these things and how they affect you. And that's what we talk about here. And, speaking of symptom management, this is a hot button issue for me, so I got to talk about it. So now San Francisco in this epidemic, they are giving homeless people drugs, and they're putting them up in hotels because nobody's staying in hotels. So they're putting the homeless people up in hotels and giving them drugs, nicotine, otherwise alcohol. And I mean, this sounds like a crazy thing to say, but this is just what happens when you get lost in symptom management. When you get lost in, oh, I feel anxious. Oh, I got to do something to dissipate the anxiety right now without looking at the underlying cause of the anxiety. Oh, there's this homeless problem. And, this has been America's homeless problem, not just in America, but, it's the most egregious in more liberal cities like San Francisco. Oh, there's this problem with homeless people. Well, let's just do what we can to deal with the surface level problem of homeless people. Let's give them shelters. Let's give them things to do. You're not in a home? Well, let's make buying a home easier. Let's make low-income housing. Right? You're just looking at the symptom, and it's not just the symptom, but the symptom from your perspective, how you would go about managing that issue if you were homeless. I mean, that's what you project out, and that makes a lot of sense if you're homeless, but you're not homeless. Homeless people have different issues that they're dealing with, and just giving them, symptom management not only doesn't solve it, but when you take symptom management, when you take certain principles to the nth degree, it looks ridiculous. Like, we're going to put homeless people up, not only in hotel rooms, but give them drugs and alcohol to satiate the symptoms. I mean, that's why I always criticize Mother Teresa, just going around being present for other people's suffering. Well, but what's the root of the suffering, right? Like, I know I've said that before. She appeases suffering. She takes care of suffering the way a handle of tequila takes care of alcoholic shakes. But if there's no structure for understanding emotions, specifically with the homeless, if there's no real conceptualization for what causes homelessness, what causes mental illness, what is the structure behind that? How can we look at mental illness philosophically? We've been trying to look at it through specific numbers and statistical analysis for the past 50, 60 years. And are we getting any better? I mean, is there not some kind of mental health epidemic? My opinion on that is the media makes the mental health epidemic out to be worse than it is, but I do think that there still is an issue. And on top of that, it's going in the wrong direction. But this isn't about San Francisco and the homeless, right? This is you. This is you and your symptom management. okay, you feel stressed, so you just go for a run. And I understand going for a run makes the stress feel better in the short term. But I would argue that the reason why you're stressed isn't because you weren't going for the run. You have to manage where the stress is coming from, specifically what it is. And that's what I hope to communicate here, on this show. What's really going on in your psyche. I don't think it's that complicated. It's difficult to deal with, but I don't think these things are too complicated. Just like I don't think basic game theory is that complicated. It can still be difficult to deal with, though, and that's what's going on here. Your breathing exercises, your guided meditation. I was actually just doing a guided meditation. I didn't do it on purpose because I was watching YouTube. I mean, my thing. I watch ancient archaeology YouTube videos in bed. It helps me go to sleep. And one of the ads that came on was for this guided meditation, and it was the ad was an hour long. I'm like, that's awesome confidence. But I just started listening to the ad. Okay, they're gonna do a guided meditation, and it was just focusing you on something outside yourself. And I only did it for maybe a few minutes. I'm like, okay, I can see how this works, but it's not the issue. But it makes sense if you can't make sense out of the issue, right? It makes sense to distract yourself if there's something you can do about it anyways. Maybe there is something that we can do about it. And that's really my challenge to you guys, is to not manage your psychology the way that San Francisco manages homeless people. I got this question a couple weeks ago. I've got it before. I think it's an important thing to talk about. I'm not going to answer the question, of course, but the question is, in a sense, what I wish I knew when I was 20 or when I was younger. I don't think he actually says 20, but I was looking up on YouTube. There's a bunch of videos online of like guru kind of guys saying, hey, if I was 20 years old again, here's what I would have done differently. And by the way, I'm not saying there's nothing I would have done differently when I was 20. I would have done a lot different. I mean, that's everybody's fantasy. I mean, if somebody says they don't have that fantasy, I, in a sense, don't believe them. Oh, I wish I was 20 again. I wish I was 25, whatever it is, so I can go back and do those things. Of course, what I say about that is that fantasy you have, all that energy you have of, oh, I would have done this and this and that differently. That's you distracting from the energy that you want to put in your life now. I mean, that energy is coming from somewhere. It's there. So just apply that to your life now. Well, okay, I would have talked to my admissions advisor in a different way. Okay, maybe you can't do that anymore. But what's the present day equivalent of your admissions advisor? Oh, I would have talked to more girls. Okay, maybe you can't do that anymore. You're married. You have a girlfriend. What's the present day equivalent of talking to more girls? You want to feel more connected with at least a woman. Well, you have one right there. If you're married or you have a girlfriend, connect with her. Really try to get through to her. So I've answered something like this before, and I think it's not that the question is wrong so much, but it really comes from a place of anxiety. Look, I have this whole life ahead of me, and I know I have some listeners who are relatively young. I mean, as young as 14, I get emails from 14, 15, and it's like, okay, I have my whole life ahead of me. How do I not screw it up? And you don't screw it up by managing the anxiety that makes you think that just knowing something, knowing to do one thing versus another is going to help you. Right? This is what I was talking about last week with alchemy. You have to submit yourself to this shamanic or alchemical process. This process of, okay, I put these certain pieces together and I mix them and I create conflict, and through this shamanic alchemical process, I can create my own kind of change that I want in my life. And it's not going to come from some guy with a freaking podcast telling you to do one thing or another. In fact, if anything, that's going to distract you from what you need to do. Because what you need to do is, of course, going to come from your own needs, what you want to do. There's just no such thing as going back and giving knowledge to yourself. This is initiation, right? Like you've heard about before. Like, guys know a lot about women. They have a swagger about them. They're confident. They get in a relationship. It's going well. They get They may even get married, and then they slowly begin to dwindle. They slowly begin to lose that swagger because they really didn't manage their psychological issues. I mean, they had the surface level of them. Like, they're managing their issues like San Francisco manages homeless people. They had the symptoms figured out, but that was only good enough when they were 20 or 25. And they meet somebody, they're in an intimate relationship, the stresses become greater, and their present way of dealing with the world wasn't working anymore. And they broke down. And she took advantage of that because that's what she's supposed to do, right? Because her survival is highly dependent on your strength as a man, your psychological identity strength. And she took advantage of that, and she just wrung you out to dry. Good for her, and now good for you, because now you have a better awareness of the process, of that shamanic alchemical process, and you just submit yourself to that over and over again. It's like, it's like, this isn't giving you directions, right? Like me telling you where to go, like directions on a map, me telling you where to go isn't going to help. Like, where do you want to go? All I can do is help you get your car moving. And you get the car moving by submitting to this shamanic alchemical process. Managing your emotions. How can you do that? Look at what anxiety specifically are you avoiding? Not what I was avoiding when I was 20. There's plenty I'm avoiding now. What anger, what needs I wasn't getting met when I was 20. I'm not going to help you. And even if what I was avoiding when I was 20 is the same thing that you're avoiding, that still doesn't help. Because it's not about necessarily picking out what you're avoiding now. It's more about getting comfortable with the process of looking at what you're avoiding and then confronting it. That's going to be way more important. You're just trying to avoid problems. And then that's exactly what you don't want to be doing, especially when you're 20. You want more problems. I mean, this is true for everybody. Like, sometimes guys email me and it's like, what's the problem? You're just talking about this one relationship that doesn't matter that much to you. Okay. Again, going back to what I was talking about at the beginning, don't listen to the surface. What's behind it? That's the real issue. Sometimes these problems, it's like, there's no problem here. Your problem is you need bigger problems. Get the car moving and then go where you want to go. Try it out for yourself. That's the only way. The one thing I wish I would have done, if I do need to answer this question, the one thing I wish I would have done more when I was 20 is just reach out and ask for help. Really. And I'm not just saying that to promote animusempire.com/schedule. We do free consultations. But boy, it would have really helped me a lot what I was going through when I was 20. And the thing about it, I mean, I had issues and everything, but I wasn't really abused in any serious way. I had a great family. I had great relationships. I had good friends. And even then, even in that situation, I really needed help. And I didn't know what the issue was. I didn't know how to ask anybody. I mean, who knows? Maybe if I would have asked somebody, I would have just gotten worse advice and it would have sent me on an even worse direction than I was already going in. But that's where this is different. We have a better way of looking at your emotions, right? Just what I wish I knew when I was 20. What do you need to do? Don't listen to me. Just listen to me in the sense where I'm showing you the process through which you can do what you want to do. And I see this all the time. I'm going to cover this quickly, but there's this thing, it's just like from men and women, from everybody on Twitter, they're telling you specifically what you need in a girlfriend. If your girlfriend's not doing this, then it's a big deal. There's this tweet from somebody on Twitter like, hey, if your girlfriend's not making you a cup of coffee, she's just a roommate. She's not like waking up in the morning to make you a cup of coffee. And look, I'm not saying that that's wrong, right? Like, if you want your girlfriend to make you a cup of coffee, that's something you need to communicate to her, whatever your standards are, whatever your expectations are. But the challenge is, are you getting your expectations from your own standards, from your own needs, from your own values, or because somebody else says this on Twitter and you're like, oh, my girlfriend's not doing that, and you feel insecure. Oh, is this a good relationship? I mean, that's just the worst thing to tell somebody. They need to do A, B, and C, like specifically, like cup of coffee, not general, hey, you got to communicate better. Here's how you communicate better. Well, really, communication comes down to managing your own emotions. And once you do that, the communication's a lot easier. Like how you look at your own emotions and go, oh, where's this anxiety coming from? You can look at your wife or girlfriend's nagging and go, where's this really coming from? But that comes from your emotional regulation, your boundary development, going from reaction to proaction, proactivity, proactive shift in paradigms. But yeah, it comes from managing your own boundary or developing a boundary. I mean, these freaking Twitter accounts just trying to, and I know why they do it. I mean, because it works, right? I mean, it's the same reason that the media always covers issues that involve a lot of fear, right? Because a society of attachment disorder, there's a lot of fear, and boy, we're going to word this coronavirus headline in a way that's going to instill the most amount of fear. Now, obviously, my thing, that's not the media's fault. The media is just a projection of our psychological issues. It's nothing wrong with the media necessarily. So I think people on Twitter, they just get a general sense of, oh, this tweet worked really well when I tweeted out this specific thing about what girlfriends or boyfriends need to be doing in a relationship. Because I think it hits that fear thing. Oh, my boyfriend's not doing that. Or, oh, my girlfriend's not doing that. Oh. Right? But that's just a replacement, right? That's just symptom management. That's just San Francisco managing homeless people. What's the solution? What are your needs? And you may not know what your needs are. And if you've been on Twitter looking into what some guru is saying about what your girlfriend needs to be doing, right? You're just tuned out of you and tuned into him and what he wants in a relationship. And maybe what he wants is fine for him. And maybe you do want the same thing. But the point is, it needs to come from, what do I want? What do I need? I mean, I've just been in countless situations, myself included. I mean, by the way, I obviously don't want to make it seem like you have these issues and I don't. Every issue, every question that I've gotten, I mean, even if I'm not dealing with that exact thing specifically, I mean, I've gone through the same thing, or am going through the same thing, at least emotionally, of course. But yeah, you got to look at your own needs. It's just amazing how I've asked guys, what do you need? And it's like I'm speaking some foreign language. What do I need? What does that even mean? What are my needs? I'm more concerned about what my mom needs, or what this Twitter guru would think if he ever met my girlfriend and she doesn't wake up and make me coffee. Like, my mind's just projected out to that and not what's going on with me. What are my values? And maybe you don't know. But the only way to figure that out isn't by asking me what I wish I would have known when I was 20. It's, how do I submit myself to this process through which I'm able to get my own, or develop my own needs, my own values, by just continually, asking myself that, consciously, unconsciously, explicitly, implicitly, or otherwise. Just have that, what are my needs? What do I want? What do I want in a girlfriend? I do the girlfriend math for you, right? You date 12 girls, at least 12 girls over the course of a year, and then develop 7 things you want just from being around girls and experiencing them and seeing what works for you and what doesn't work. And then from there, you develop 7 things that you want. Then you get a girlfriend who has those 7 things. If it's your first girlfriend, guess what? It's not going to work out. That's your initiation. She's going to wring you out to dry. She is just going to pummel you into just like nothing. And then you build back up again. You go through that process 2 more times. And then from there, right? Then from there you can develop your own needs, and by then you have enough, at least, some skill with women where you can go out and meet, girls whenever you want, in a sense. But that's difficult. That'll take 3 to 4 years at least, and it's just easier to listen to what some guru says about on Twitter, and your girlfriend needs to be doing X, Y, and Z, and if she's not, then she's just some roommate. I don't know. Maybe. Even if those standards are correct, it's just like, you got to develop them yourself. If it's just coming from somebody else, what's going to happen? You're going to meet some girl and you're going to have these standards, and it's not going to be a genuine connection. And the deeper you get into the relationship, the more genuine the connection must necessarily become, which only reveal the fact that those weren't really your standards. That wasn't really you in the first place. And then you get in the situation where you enter the relationship with a bunch of swagger, and then women just have a knack, God bless them. Women have a knack for just chewing us up and spitting us out when it's just smoke and mirrors. All right. That's enough for me. We'll get to your questions. This first one. So I talk about the importance of work on this podcast. I have a couple articles on Animus there and on the blog. You can click on the top of the site. What comes to mind? The sacred value, I think that's a good one. Also, your 9 to 5 is helping you. Just about the importance of work, and we need something. And this listener asked a question. So I talk about the psychological effect the reason why work sets us free is because, we need to produce. We need to produce to make money, to sustain ourselves. If we don't produce ourselves, then we must necessarily rely on others financially. And when we do that financially, we end up inevitably relying on them psychologically, and it just takes away from your ability to create your own identity. I don't think you need to make tons of money. I think the more the better, right? I'm not a socialist or anything. I don't think making money is bad. But, it's just about being psychologically independent. But his issue is, what if you don't have to work? What if you win the lottery, or your wife inherited a bunch of money, or you inherited a bunch of money and you don't have to work? Then how does work set you free at that point? And to this I say, that's a really good question. And this is something that I talk about in Man's Guide to Shame. But boy, it just seems to be this thing that comes up across many different cultures, that when people get hurt, when they can't work anymore, and they can't produce to sustain themselves, even if they have plenty of money, then they just start to feel shame. It just, this thing in us to constantly be active. And it makes sense that, so much of our psychological health depends on what our physical body is doing. That depends on how our body is interacting with the environment. I make that case in the fourth book in my book, Man's Guide to Psychology, and awareness, how, if you look at how we evolved, our mind evolved right along with our senses and our ability to interact with the world. In fact, we wouldn't have a mind if it wasn't for our ability to interact with the world. And this is just one of the many issues they have with coming up with really relevant AI. An AI that really thinks like a human. Because to think like a human, you need digits, you need a thumb. That's why our ancestor 50 million years ago was a mouse, and it looked just like how a mouse looks now, or a shrew, but it had an opposable thumb. Well, that changed everything. That changed the cognitive development, right? That added to the dexterity, which led to more brain development, and that brain development led to more dexterity, or which led to more physical adaptation with the environment, which led to more psychological adaptation with the environment. It just became this powerful feedback loop that, 50 million years may not seem like that long ago, but evolutionarily, a lot of things can happen in that time. So I don't know what it is, but we got to work. And if we don't, we just feel like crap. And that's true for everybody. The only caveat there is, you can work and save up a lot of money and then live off that money. I think that probably wouldn't do it, because in the back of your mind, okay, I made this money, but boy, you got to work. Now, obviously, I could take it back to, okay, well, the more you work, the more you're interacting with the environment, so just more anxiety management, more anger management, and with that, you get a stronger boundary the more you work, right? That just inevitably happens. But again, I think this listener is asking something else, like, what is it about humans? And I don't know. It's just something there. I think it has to do with how we evolved. This is a very advanced form of, the shrew with the opposable thumb is going to get a stronger brain development because it has an opposable thumb, because it can now, with that opposable thumb, interact with the world in a more influential way, just have more interactions with the world, be able to influence its environment more brain development, more ability to influence the environment physically. And I think our need to work is just an advanced form, an extension of that process. this interaction with the world. I mean, and plus, just so much of work is interacting with other people. I mean, even just work from home, which I do. But there's just tons of interaction I have with other people, and all of it's enriching. That's why I say animusempire.com/schedule. Even if you have no intention of working with me or anything like that, I just love to hear from you guys. It's so enriching to me, and I hope I can, just give you some kind of feedback, if nothing else, on what would be a good next step. Again, what's the one thing I wish I would have done when I was freaking 20 years old, is just reach out more. And in a sense, I mean, this is what I'm doing with Animus, in a sense, not explicitly, but what would I have needed when I was 20 years old? And I was the kind of guy who wanted to know, what do I need to do? I don't want to mess my life up. What I needed is somebody 15 years older than me going, how about you mess your life up? And then learn how to put yourself back together. That's kind of the point. And then submit yourself to that process. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, this is a great question, and I don't know exactly if that's as specific. I mean, you know who you are, listener. If you want to ask me more about this, I'd be glad to navel gaze about this even more. I love doing that. But yeah, just, man, when we stop working, we just don't feel good about ourselves. And that's not, other people are going to think one way or another about me, or, I'm going to feel guilty, or, I need to make a lot of money to get people's approval. I mean, that may be part of it. I mean, that would be an unhealthy outlet for that. But even with all those things removed, you got to keep moving. You got to keep moving. Like, that's what our bodies are built for, and that's what our mind is built for, right? Like, we don't plow fields anymore. We don't go on huge hunter and gathering, or just hunting expeditions. I guess gathering's not, men's workout and women's workout look very different, because what women are trying to do is replicate gathering. That's why they do like lame aerobic stuff, and they always do like silly things like Taibo and jazzercise. They're just trying to mimic gathering, but men who try to mimic hunting. So we really want to be out on the African savannah throwing huge spears at lions or saber-toothed tigers, but we can't do that anymore. So we go to the gym. Okay, I'm going to do military press. That's about the same thing, because it's just in us. We got to do that. And if we're not, we're going to be unhealthy. Okay, I don't think I'm going to get anything else out of that one. The next question. So I made this tweet a couple weeks ago about, look, if you don't separate from your mom, then you don't know what attraction is, or you don't know what is attractive. And so this is why I was bringing up that what I see on Twitter all the time from like Twitter gurus. And if your girlfriend doesn't do that, she's your roommate, or you're a huge puss. Yeah, because you don't have an identity until you separate from your mom. So if you don't have an identity, how do you know what you find attractive? How do you, so what does not separating from your mom mean? It means your mom, her wishes, her desires are in your mind, controlling you, telling you what to do. I need to be a doctor. I need to be a good boy. Don't get angry. Don't be aggressive. If you're not separated from your mom, that's in your mind. So you're going to be unconsciously looking for a woman that you want. I don't know, maybe to some degree, but also, right, what do guys say all the time? The kind of girl I could bring home to mom. You know how sick that is? No, you got to separate from the mom. Separate psychologically. Create a boundary there. In a sense, let her know what's going on with you. Stop hiding from your mom. But my mom's going to cry. She's sensitive. Make your mom cry. That's a huge part of separation. And guys who don't separate is they spend their adolescent years trying to not make their mom cry. Trying to manage their mom's emotions. Your mom needs to cry. Every mom should be horrified to find out what's going on in every 13-year-old boy's mind. Because it's horrifying. And every mom is right to cry. And you're right to make your mom cry. That's an important part of the process. So you can develop your own identity apart from your mom. Now, of course, if later you want to integrate, my mom was right about that. We have similar values about that. So I'm going to find a girl like that. But that's you doing it consciously as opposed to consciously. Like if you want your girlfriend to wake up and make you coffee every day, fine. Do it because you want to, not because some guru guy on Twitter tells you to. So that's what this comes down. This comes from boundary development. And it's not just separation from your mom, right? It's just any kind of boundary development, any kind of unconscious anxiety issues that you have that you're not dealing with, that's manifesting as procrastination or perfectionism or OCD or some kind of even mild substance abuse. Or whenever I get stressed, okay, I'll just go for a run, right? Dealing with the symptoms like you're San Francisco dealing with homeless people. Now, the more you do that, you're just not going to get to the root of the issue. And, who knows? Like you're just, your decisions are going to be influenced by things that you don't understand. And then, 5 years later, you're with this girl who you don't even like. And you're like, what am I doing with this girl? It's like, because you didn't really choose her, right? That's the issue. Like I always tell guys in therapy, we're doing the work now. So in 5 years, you're going to be in a much better situation to make, whatever looming decision you have, whether it's choosing a career or a new career or finding a girlfriend or whether you want to leave your girlfriend or divorce your wife. We want to make sure that decision is as in line with reality as we possibly can make it. We do that by going through your issues in therapy. Specifically, right? That's what we do here. Specifically, how to do that exactly. All right, and we have a next question here about raising children. Is it okay to narrate what a child's doing when he's doing it? So this example is, if he's testing boundaries, is it okay to just narrate, I guess? Say, oh, look, he's testing boundaries. Is this an okay thing to do? Well, I don't know. I think the main issue with raising children and interacting with everybody, but, predominantly with raising children because you have the most influence on your children. I know everybody's making a big deal about genetics now, and genetics is a big deal. Don't get me wrong. But nobody's going to have more of an impact on you than your parents, or you're not going to have more of an impact on anybody else than your own children. So what happens is, just all relationships, but especially with children, is the child takes on unconscious issues from the parents. That is like the number one rule of raising children. I know that's vague and it's difficult, but that's the truth. Your child takes on your unconscious issues, which means any issue that you don't manage is going to come up and affect your relationship with your child. And your child is very sensitive, especially when he's young, and he will just take on those issues, internalize them, and those are the issues specifically that he will be processing in therapy in 20 years is issues that you have not processed. I mean, similar with, you got to separate from the mom to pick a girlfriend, because otherwise, right, who's the one doing the picking? And that's why I would say about this is it okay to narrate what your child's doing? Yeah, it's fine as long as you don't have any unconscious baggage in you're doing it. Like, so if you resent your children, if you're even mildly frustrated or upset with the fact that they're testing boundaries, and that's a totally normal, natural, healthy function, you want them to test boundaries, you want them to misbehave. I mean, it just makes sense. You enter in this world. I mean, what's your first thought is, what can I get away with? That's healthy. Now, an unhealthy thought, although it's easier on the parents in the short term, is, oh, I just better do what mommy and daddy want me to do. That seems like a good thing to do, and then people will go to that kid and go, oh, you're so well behaved. And then instead of validating themselves, they learn to work to get the validation of other people, which again looks really good in the short term. And they're such a nice little kid. But then that's where you get shooting sprees. So this isn't so much of what you do, right? This is how you do it. And I would just ask this listener, why are you doing this? Why are you narrating? Is it to make yourself calm? Is it to remove yourself from the situation emotionally? I could see that being a healthy thing. But if it's to be condescending to the kid or kind of like lord your knowledge over him because you resent your child for something, then that would be something totally different. And this is just the same thing with every kind of parenting. Like how strict should you be with children? Right? That's a very common, very normal parenting question. How strict should you be with children? Well, why are you being strict? Are you being strict because you want the best for your child and so you want them to do things that are going to be more helpful for them so they can go on and live their own life? Yeah, are you being strict so they can, kind of develop along with your boundary, but it puts them in a better psychological state from which they can go on and create their own boundary? Or are you doing it because you're trying to shut them down, because you don't want them to have fun, because you're still resentful about your parents, because you weren't allowed to have a lot of fun in high school, so they're not going to have fun in high school? Are you trying to shut them down versus are you trying to let them flourish, or you want the best for them? And if it's coming from unconscious resentment, then, I don't care how strict you are or how not strict you are, it's going to affect the child negatively. There's like a few general rules for parenting, though, right? Like, the ones that parents seem to be the most confused about is daycare. Like daycare from 0 to 2, not that helpful, but daycare after 2 is very helpful, right? Because it's just about the regulation that the child really only gets from FaceTime with the parents. And so they need to be around the parents the most from 0 to 2, roughly. But then parents take that and they say, oh, I can't let my kids around any other kids. I need them to stay with me. But then you get attachment issues with that because they're just around you all the time. So they can't deal with that separation anxiety, which they're not really ready to deal with when from 0 to 2, right? Their brain can't handle that kind of separation anxiety. However, after 2 or after 3, then their brain needs that anxiety to develop, and actually it creates the myelination between the prefrontal cortex, which is starting to form at this point, and the HPA complex. So there's just a few other things like that, but other than that, it's really, that's all parenting advice is don't worry about the kid and what to do with the kid, worry about yourself. Look at your relationship with yourself. The same thing with couples therapy. I don't think there's anything wrong with couples therapy. I think it can be helpful. But all that stems from your relationship with your own unconscious, because that's going to determine to a large extent how you relate with other people, right? That's the main issue. Is there anything else I want to say? Yeah. So just look at the intention. Why are you doing it? Right? This is good for you to introspect and ask yourself what you're doing. Oh, look, wife, he's testing boundaries again. It's all right. This is not only normal, but it's good, and we want him to do this. It's fine. Right? If it's coming from that place, then yeah, I think it's totally healthy. But again, like all relationships, your relationship, they all come back to your relationship with yourself, with your own unconscious. animusempire.com/schedule. Again, free 30-minute consultations. If you have a question for the show, I still have a couple more here. animus@animusempire.com. I can get to them next time I do one of these kinds of podcasts. Not sure what I have planned for next week's podcast. Let me think about that. I have some ideas in the work, but I'll tweet about that. And I'll leave it there. Thank you guys for joining me. And of course, I wish you all the joy, all the pain that comes from being in touch with reality.